Imagine your children haven't spoken in 2 years, not a single word since their mother died. Then one day, they see a stranger and suddenly cry out, "Mama." What would you do? Would you believe it's a miracle? Or would you think it's a trap? Tonight, I'm bringing you the story of Park Min-ho, a man whose world shattered when his wife passed away. His twin children fell silent. Trapped in grief they were too young to understand. For 2 years, he's lived in a world of silence, protecting them from dangers they can't even comprehend. Then one ordinary night in a diner, everything changes. His children look at a waitress, a complete stranger, and speak for the first time. One word.
Mga. Minho's instincts to scream danger.
Setup. Trap. In his world, coincidences don't exist. But there's something about this woman, Nia Caldwell, that his children recognize. Something impossible. Something that defies every logical explanation. What Min-ho doesn't know yet is that Nia holds a secret connection to his family, one that will shatter everything he thought he understood about fate, loss, and second chances. Before we dive into what happens when Min-ho discovers the truth, if you love stories about impossible connections and miracles that defy explanation, smash that like button right now. This story will absolutely blow your mind. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because you won't want to miss how a waitress becomes the key to healing a broken family. Drop a comment and tell me, do you believe some people are meant to find each other? Let me know below. Alright, let's get into it, because Min-ho is about to investigate this woman, and what he discovers will change everything he believes about life and death. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Min-ho stood near the doorway, his sharp eyes scanning every corner. The twins clutched his coat, tiny hands trembling, their wide eyes still fixed on Nia Caldwell. He should have been alert, calculating. Every instinct in his body screamed danger, yet what had just happened refused to make sense. His children, silent for 2 long years, had spoken. They had said a word no stranger should ever hear first. Mama.
Minho's yaw tightened.
Was it a setup? Some elaborate trap designed by the rival gangs that had been shadowing him for weeks. He could feel the weight of the gun under his coat, the familiar comfort of cold steel against his palm. Yet, there was something else, a slow, insidious tug at the part of him he had buried long ago, a whisper of hope he refused to acknowledge. He remembered the night his wife had died. The hospital hallways smelled of antiseptic and despair. He had held her hand as life drained from her eyes, powerless against the illness that had stolen her. The twins had been 2 months old then, innocent and fragile. They had cried through the night, and he had cried with them, only to harden afterward, building walls around his grief. Words had stopped coming from them shortly thereafter, as if their voices had been trapped by the same sorrow that had swallowed their mother. Now, watching them reach toward Nia, Min-ho's mind raced. The diner, the smell of coffee, the mundane chatter, all of it seemed irrelevant. All that mattered was the impossible miracle unfolding before him. He had never believed in coincidences. He had never believed in miracles. Yet, here were his children, speaking for the first time, pointing at a stranger with clarity and love. A stranger who had no reason to be their world, and yet somehow already was. He could not risk ignoring this. Not with enemies waiting, not with his children's fragile hearts at stake. Set up surveillance on her. Every movement, every call, every connection, he ordered, his voice low, deadly precise. Even if she was innocent, he would know. Even if this was genuine, he would be prepared. The world he controlled demanded nothing less. And yet, beneath the armor of suspicion and ruthless instinct, a single thought lingered, stubborn and uninvited. Why her? Before we dive into what happens next, if you're already hooked by this impossible moment, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me, would you trust a stranger your children called Mama? Subscribe because this story is about to get wild, and you don't want to miss what Min-ho discovers about Nia. Alright, let's get back to the diner. where Minho is about to make a decision that changes everything. He watched Nia move behind the counter, unaware of the silent storm she had ignited. His eyes flicked to the twins, their small fingers still pointing, their gazes unwavering. Every protective instinct he had honed through years of violence screamed at him to intervene, to control, to command, but part of him hesitated. Could something so small, so human, really defy the rules of his world? Minho's life had always been measured in fear, power, and control. But for the first time in years, he realized there might be another measure, a measure defined by heartbeats, whispers, and the fragile trust of children. And that realization both terrified and compelled him in equal measure. He straightened, his coat brushing against the twins' tiny hands. Surveillance would uncover the truth, yes, but what it would not reveal was the impossible bond forming here, one that even he could not yet comprehend. One word, one miraculous word.
Mama.
And suddenly, nothing in his world would ever be the same. Nia wiped her hands on the apron that had seen better days, the fabric frayed at the edges, the stain near the pocket a permanent reminder of long shifts and spilled coffee. The diner's bell jingled as a few regulars trickled in, their conversations blending into the low hum of the old air conditioner. She moved with practiced efficiency, refilling cups, taking orders, and offering the rare smile that had a way of lighting even the dimmest corners of the place. Life had taught her to keep going, to give what she could even when it felt like the world owed her nothing. Her days were a delicate balance of survival and kindness. 2 jobs, 2 sets of schedules, 2 different worlds she navigated without complaint. She helped the elderly neighbor with groceries, volunteered occasionally at a local shelter, and never asked for recognition. People often overlooked her, assuming she was just another face behind the counter, a temporary presence. Yet there was a depth to her, a generosity that ran quietly beneath the surface of exhaustion and modesty. As she wiped down a table, the memory surfaced again, sharp and inexplicable. Years ago, she had made the decision to donate a kidney anonymously. She had never known the recipient's name, had never seen the person whose life she had touched so profoundly. It had been a choice made in a moment of quiet clarity, a need to give life without expecting anything in return. She remembered the hospital room, the sterile smell, the feeling of doing something that mattered in a world that often ignored small acts of courage. Now, standing behind the counter, Nia had no recollection of the man who had watched her from the doorway, no memory of the children who had called her mama. To her, they were just strangers, fleeting moments in an ordinary day. And yet, the energy in the room, the way the twins had reached, the way they had spoken, felt like it had brushed against some hidden corner of her heart. Her life had been one of quiet resilience, punctuated by small victories and endless work. Yet even in her struggles, she had always given more than she took, a fact that seemed both natural and necessary. Helping others was not a choice. It was who she had become over the years, shaped by circumstances, empathy, and an unspoken understanding that life was fleeting and fragile. As Nia rearranged the coffee cups, she felt the weight of her own endurance, the countless nights she had gone home to an empty apartment, the fatigue in her bones, the loneliness that never quite left. Still, she would rise the next morning, serve the strangers who wandered into her little diner, and continue to give, quietly, unassumingly, unaware that the act of her giving had already altered the course of lives she had never met. She had no idea that years ago, one of her anonymous choices, the kidney donation, had saved a life, a family, a world she had never been a part of. That knowledge would come later, in its own time, but for now, she focused on the tasks in front of her, moving with gentle determination through the rhythm of a life lived in quiet courage and unnoticed devotion. Minho sat in the back office of his high-rise headquarters, the city lights stretching below like a glittering battlefield. He listened intently as his men delivered the reports, their voices clipped, precise. Nia Caldwell, clean. No criminal record, no ties to gangs, no suspicious contacts. Every angle had been checked, every connection traced. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a struggling waitress, a quiet figure in a world that rarely noticed her. And yet, the impossibility of the situation gnawed at him. His twins, silent for 2 years, had spoken for the first time, and their word had been directed at her. He had seen the clarity in their eyes, the unwavering certainty as they reached toward her. He had built his life on logic, on control, on understanding every variable. None of it explained this. The next file he opened made his pulse skip. Medical records, detailed and precise, revealed the impossible truth. Nia's kidney, donated anonymously years ago, had gone to his late wife. She had been the one who gave life to the woman he had loved, the woman who had died too soon. The implications were staggering, almost unbearable. The children's instinct, their sudden words, could not be dismissed as coincidence. Somehow, impossibly, they had recognized her. Minho leaned back, running a hand over his face, his mind a storm of questions. Cellular memory, spiritual connections, things he had dismissed as nonsense, now screamed for his attention. Could a piece of someone, their essence, their life force, be carried through an organ? Could children, even too young to understand the mechanics of life and death, feel that presence? His rational mind rejected the idea, yet every fiber of his being whispered that it was true. He couldn't confront her directly, not yet. He needed to be sure. He needed to understand whether this was fate, coincidence, or some elaborate trick. And so he devised a plan, another coincidental meeting, engineered down to the smallest detail. The diner would be the stage, his children the signal, and Nia the unknowingly central figure in a test of impossible proportions. He would observe, measure, and determine if the connection he had seen was genuine. Even as he arranged the logistics, Minho felt the stirrings of something long buried, hesitation, vulnerability, a fragile hope that had no place in his world of power and fear. If this connection was real, if Nia truly was tied to his family in ways science could not explain, then everything he had known about control and certainty might be meaningless. And yet, he could not ignore it. He would see it for himself, and he would confront the impossible with his own eyes. Hold up, did you catch that? The waitress who saved his wife's life is now the one his children recognize as Mama. If that just gave you chills, hit that like button. Comment below, do you believe in cellular memory, or is this something even deeper? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story is just heating up. Now let's see how Minho handles this truth he never saw coming. The diner smelled of fresh coffee and fried dough, a comforting mix that belied the tension in the air. Minho sat in the corner booth, the twins perched beside him, their tiny hands gripping his fingers tightly. He watched Nia move among the tables, her presence calm, unaware of the silent test being orchestrated around her. Every step she took, every glance she gave a customer, was ordinary, but to Minho, every ordinary detail now carried weight. As Nia approached the twins with a tray of milk and cookies, their faces lit up in ways that froze Minho in place. Their eyes sparkled with recognition, a warmth he hadn't seen since his wife had been alive. Tiny hands reached out, arms trembling with the effort of motion, fingers stretching toward her as if pulled by an invisible thread. "Mama," they whispered in unison, voices clear and unhesitant. Nia stopped mid-step, her breath catching in her throat. She knelt slowly, unsure, instinctively opening her arms. There was something magnetic about the children's pull, something she couldn't explain but felt deep in her chest. Her heart raced, a fluttering warmth that wasn't just surprise. It was belonging, an inexplicable tether that made the world outside the diner blur into insignificance. Minho's gaze never wavered. He had prepared for suspicion, for resistance, for some trick or ruse. Yet here it was, undeniable, impossible, and utterly genuine. The rational part of him screamed for caution. His instincts, honed through years of violence and betrayal, warned him to withdraw, to protect his children from potential danger. But another part, smaller, fragile, almost forgotten, quivered with hope. Could this woman really be the connection his family had needed all along? He leaned forward slightly, observing every microexpression on Nia's face, the subtle hesitations, the unconscious mirroring of the twins' movements. She was cautious but unafraid. She was drawn to them without coercion, her actions instinctive, protective, and tender. Minho felt his chest tighten, a mix of disbelief and something dangerously close to relief. The twins crawled toward her, giggling as she lifted them one by one, holding them with a natural grace that suggested she had always belonged in that moment. Their laughter echoed in the small diner, bouncing off the walls in a symphony of innocence and recognition. Minho remained seated, torn between the need to control and the longing to surrender to the truth he couldn't yet name. He realized that this test had become something else entirely, not an examination of her intentions, but a revelation of the bond that had existed all along. The children had spoken, and the answer was clear in their joyous eyes and reaching hands. The impossible connection was no longer a theory. It was a living, breathing reality he could neither deny nor fully comprehend. Minho exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the booth. The line between caution and faith had blurred, and for the first time in years, he felt the fragile pulse of hope stirring in his chest. The world outside the diner remained unpredictable, dangerous, but inside, a miracle was unfolding, one small step at a time. Minho stood by the counter, watching Nia clear a table, her movements fluid and calm, completely unaware of the storm about to descend. He took a deep breath, the weight of years pressing on his chest, and stepped forward. "Nia," he said quietly, not wanting to alarm the twins, who were now absorbed in their coloring books at a nearby table. She looked up, startled, and he studied her face, the curiosity, the slight tension, the instinctive caution. He chose his words carefully, stripping away the barriers he usually carried. "I need to tell you something. It's about your kidney donation and about my family." Her brows furrowed, confusion mixing with the faint spark of recognition that made her heart skip. She nodded for him to continue. "My wife, she passed away 2 years ago," Minho said, voice low but steady. "You saved her life. Your kidney, it was hers. I didn't know who you were at the time. I only know now that my children, the twins, they've called you Mama." Nia froze, a hand instinctively rising to her mouth. Her mind spun, connecting fragments of memory. The hospital, the paperwork, the anonymity she had insisted upon. And now these children, reaching for her, laughing, trusting, calling her by a word she had never expected to hear in connection with herself. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, hot and unrelenting. She had saved someone who became a mother, who had given life to these children, and they recognized her. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. The weight of the revelation pressed on her chest, a mix of awe, fear, and disbelief. "I didn't even know who received the kidney. I never imagined." Minho's gaze softened as he watched her struggle to comprehend the impossible. "I want you to spend time with them," he said quietly. "Let them know you. Don't force it, don't rush it. Just be there. They've waited too long to feel safe, to feel love. And somehow, you're part of that now." Her breath caught, and she swallowed hard, emotions swirling in a storm she had no way to control. The thought of stepping into this life, into the hearts of these children, was terrifying, but the pull was undeniable. Their smiles, their small, outstretched hands, had already begun to claim a space in her soul she hadn't known existed. Minho stepped back slightly, giving her space, his own mind racing with caution and hope. He didn't reveal everything, his full life, his world of shadows, but he gave her enough truth to understand the stakes, enough to make a choice. The twins looked up at him briefly, eyes wide, then returned their focus to Nia, their small hands stretching toward her as if to bridge the gap between past and present, between loss and the fragile promise of connection. For the first time in years, Minho allowed himself to hope that this impossible chain of events, a stranger's gift, a mother lost, and children silent too long, might lead to something real, something that could heal them all. He watched silently, waiting for her choice, knowing that this moment could change everything. Nia sat cross-legged on the floor of the living room, the twins squirming with excitement as they clutched crayons and half-finished drawings. Their laughter was contagious, filling the space with a warmth Minho hadn't realized he'd missed so desperately. "Look, Mama," one of them exclaimed, holding up a scribbled rainbow. "For you." Nia's chest tightened, and a smile broke through her usual composure. She reached out, tracing the edges of the paper gently. "It's beautiful," she said softly. Her voice carried a tenderness she hadn't known she possessed, a reflection of the bond forming with these children who had already claimed her as part of their world. Minho watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame, his arms crossed but his eyes softening. Every giggle, every shy glance the twins threw at Nia chipped away at the walls he had built around his heart. 2 years of silence and grief, and here was life returning in the most unexpected of forms. He felt emotions stir, hope, longing, the ache of joy that hadn't touched him in years. He wanted to step forward, to join them, but he remained hidden, letting this fragile healing unfold without interference. The twins began to speak more freely, words tumbling out in bursts of excitement. Nia responded with patience, encouraging each sound, each sentence, until the room was alive with conversation that had once seemed impossible. She found herself answering questions, reading stories, singing songs, laughing with abandon. Each interaction strengthened a connection that felt both familiar and astonishingly new. Later, when the children napped, Minho closed the door and finally spoke to Nia, his voice quiet, serious. "There's something you need to know," he said. "My life. It's complicated, dangerous. Not everyone I deal with has the best intentions, and my world is one most people would run from if they knew the truth." Nia's eyes widened. She had sensed an intensity, a quiet edge to him, but hearing it aloud made her stomach twist. Fear prickled along her spine. I don't know if I can. I need to think." Minho held up a hand, not as a barrier, but as reassurance. "I'm not asking you to make a decision yet. I only want you to understand the stakes. You'll see the world I navigate, the risks, the enemies, but I need you to know that your choice is yours. You can stay with them, with us, or you can walk away." Nia sat back, taking a deep breath. Her gaze drifted to the twins, sleeping side by side, faces relaxed and peaceful. The pull she felt toward them was undeniable, yet the weight of the life she might be stepping into was frightening. Still, the thought of abandoning these children, after the bond already forming, felt impossible. Her heart ached in a way that demanded courage. Minho watched her, silent, knowing that her next words would define the fragile, tentative path forward. For the first time, he felt the uncertainty of hope, and it terrified him, but it was also the only thing that might save them all. If this moment is hitting you in the feels, you're not alone. The journey from broken to healing is never easy, especially for a man like Minho. Show some love by hitting that like button and drop a comment sharing. Have you ever had someone unexpectedly come into your life and change everything? Share this video with someone who needs to see that healing can come from the most unexpected places. But before Minho can fully accept this miracle, his past is about to catch up with him in the worst way. Minho's eyes scan the streets from his black SUV, the city lights reflecting off the polished leather interior. His instincts, honed from years navigating a world of shadows and betrayal, prickled with a familiar unease. Something was stirring, unseen, calculated, and dangerous. For weeks, his enemies had been watching, waiting for a crack, a weakness to exploit. And now, to them, there was one, Nia. She was a stranger to the underworld, a woman completely unarmed in a world where he was constantly armored. If they could reach her, they could strike at him, unbalance him, and use the children as leverage. He could feel it in the subtle changes, the cars that lingered too long, the shadows that moved with intent. He'd instructed his men to stay vigilant, but he knew that caution alone wouldn't suffice. The presence of the twins made the stakes higher, and the need to protect them absolute. Inside the diner, Nia smiled at the twins, passing them juice and laughing at their chatter. They were blissfully unaware of the danger encroaching, and Minho hated the idea of that innocence being shattered. He had brought them here one last time, to the small, warm place that had begun to feel like a safe harbor. He watched them from the corner of his eye, every muscle in his body tensed, ready to react. He knew that the world outside the diner's glowing windows was ruthless. His rivals had been making their moves subtly, quietly, but he could almost feel their strategy unfolding, like pieces sliding across a hidden chessboard. Nia was a part of this family now, and that made her, and by extension the twins, a target. Yet he also recognized the rare and delicate moment they were experiencing. The twins laughed freely, their little hands reaching for Nia, their eyes bright and trusting. He felt a pang of something he hadn't let himself feel in years, a fragile hope, fragile because it was so close to being threatened. Minho leaned back slightly, his jaw tightening as he processed his options. He couldn't shelter them forever, but he could ensure that, for this moment, they had peace. He made a silent vow. Whatever it took, no harm would come to Nia or the children while he had breath in his body. He would face the danger head-on, but first, he allowed himself to soak in this fleeting warmth, the laughter, the small signs of life returning to his children. Even as he sat there, calculating and wary, he felt the stirring of a deeper purpose. Protecting them wasn't just about control or revenge. It was about preserving the fragile humanity that still lingered in his life, the chance to rebuild something real amidst the shadows. Outside, headlights glimmered in the distance, the subtle prelude to the storm that was about to descend. But inside, the warmth of the diner and the laughter of children offered a temporary, precious reprieve. Minho's fingers clenched around the steering wheel, ready for what was coming, but unwilling to let the joy before him be erased without a fight. The evening air outside the diner was thick with tension, the neon sign flickering as if warning of the chaos to come. Minho stood near the entrance, the twins clinging to his sides, their small hands trembling with the faintest hint of unease. He could sense it, the calculated approach of danger, the silent march of enemies who had been waiting for the perfect moment. Without warning, the glass front erupted in shards. Gunfire tore through the air, bullets bouncing off metal and splintering wood. Patrons screamed, diving for cover, and the diner erupted into chaos. Smoke mingled with the acrid scent of gunpowder, and Minho's eyes immediately sought Nia, who instinctively crouched near the children. A clear escape route lay open behind the counter, a simple dash to safety. But Nia didn't run. She swept the twins into her arms, shielding them with her body, every instinct screaming to protect them at all costs. Her sacrifice was immediate, unquestioned, and it struck Minho like a physical blow. Time slowed as he watched her take the bullets meant for them, her form trembling but unyielding. And in that moment, something inside him broke open. The carefully constructed walls of control, the ice around his heart. He saw her courage, her love, her unwavering devotion, and for the first time in years, he let himself feel fully, completely, without restraint. With a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the diner, Minho unleashed his fury. He moved through the chaos with precision, disarming, disabling, and neutralizing the threat with a terrifying efficiency. His focus was absolute. Nothing mattered except the safety of Nia and the twins. Bullets tore past, shattering tables and sending glass flying, but Minho's wrath was unstoppable. He fought like a man possessed, fueled by the raw realization of what he could not bear to lose. Finally, silence began to descend as the last of the attackers were incapacitated or fled into the night. Nia slumped against him, blood trickling down her arm. The twins cried out in a mix of terror and relief, their voices calling for both Mama and Papa. The raw emotion of the moment filled the room, mingling with the acrid smoke and shattered remnants of the diner. Minho's hands shook as he held them close, the enormity of what had just happened settling over him. For the first time, he allowed himself to let go of fear entirely, letting grief, love, and hope intermingle in a flood he hadn't thought possible. Nia's sacrifice, her willingness to stand between his children and danger, had not only saved them, it had pierced the last defenses of his heart, proving that family could exist beyond blood and obligation. In the aftermath, the diner was a ruin, but in its center, a fragile, unbreakable family clung to each other, united by terror, survival, and the undeniable power of shared love. The night had nearly stolen everything, but it had also illuminated the truth that Minho had been too afraid to accept. Some bonds are forged in fire, and they are unyielding. Did you see that? Nia risked everything for children she barely knows. That's the moment Minho realized what his heart already knew. If this scene had your heart racing, smash that like button and tell me in the comments. Would you have run, or would you have stayed to protect them? And if you're feeling this story, share it with someone who loves powerful narratives about a chosen family. Now let's see how this impossible family finds its way forward. Sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds, casting a warm glow over the sterile white room. Nia lay in the bed, her arm bandaged and bruised, the faintest trace of pain lingering in her expression. Yet even in the quiet hum of monitors, there was a serenity to the moment, broken only by the soft breathing of the twins who had fallen asleep, nestled between her and Minho. Minho sat in the chair beside the bed, his hand lightly brushing against hers, a tether that had grown stronger with each trial, each shared moment of fear and courage. He watched her, truly looked at her, not as a hero who had saved lives, but as the woman who had become irreplaceable in the fragile ecosystem of their hearts. He began, voice low but steady. I can't ask you to be just someone who works for me. Not after everything. I want you here with us. Not as a nurse, not as a helper, as family. Nia's eyes met his wide, reflective pools of emotion. The reality of his words settled over her like sunlight warming cold earth. For so long, she had acted in isolation on duty, in instinct. And now, after everything, the organ donation, the twins calling her Mama, the chaos that nearly tore them apart, she finally understood the depth of her connection to this family. She smiled faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek. I gave her life, she whispered, voice trembling. And now, I'll help you give them one too. A real life. A family. Minho's expression softened in a way it hadn't in years. A weight seemed to lift from his shoulders, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. Hope, trust, and the fragile beginnings of happiness. He reached over, gently brushing a strand of hair from Nia's face, his thumb lingering against her cheek, a silent promise of protection and care. The twins stirred slightly, their small hands seeking comfort from both Nia and Minho. Their faces were serene, peaceful, safe in a way that only comes from genuine love and presence. Minho glanced down at them, the reality of their survival and growth hitting him with full force. The terror, the losses, the endless walls he had built around his heart, all of it melted away in this quiet, sacred moment. For the first time in years, Minho smiled, not a controlled, polite smile, but one that reached his eyes, one that reflected the joy of a man who had found what he didn't know he was missing. In the hospital room, amid bandages and monitors, amidst echoes of a life that had once seemed unfixable, a family was reborn. Broken pieces had been gathered, held together by courage, love, and the impossible threads of fate that had brought Nia into their lives. Outside, the world continued in its chaos, but inside, hope had been reclaimed. The journey ahead would not be without challenges. But for Minho, Nia, and the twins, the horizon now held promise, a promise they would face together as a family, unshakable and whole. And there it is, a mafia boss who learned to love again, twins who found their voice, a waitress who became the heart of a family that wasn't hers by blood, but absolutely was by soul. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and unexpected miracles, I need you to hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, what was your favorite moment? Was it when the twins first spoke? When Minho discovered the truth? Or when Nia proved she'd die for those children? Subscribe and turn on notifications because I bring you stories like this, stories that make you feel something real. Share this video with anyone who needs to remember that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about recognizing the souls that were meant to find each other. You just experienced something special. Don't let it end here. Join this community of people who believe in the power of story. I'll see you in the next one, where we dive into another journey that'll stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Park Min-ho walked into that diner, a broken man leading a broken family. He walked out with something he thought he'd never have again, hope. Because sometimes the universe doesn't replace what you lost. It sends you exactly what you need to survive. And for Min-ho, that wasn't another wife. It was Nia, the woman who saved his wife's life and then saved his children's souls. Some stories end with the end. This one is just the beginning.